But basically what Halcyon's doing is taking the bucket of documents that I gave it, trying to parse out the most relevant paragraphs of text and primary sources, and then writing a little report based on those sources. And for anything specific, it's giving a citation back so you can read the underlying paragraph that it got the information from.
Hey, Jeannie.
Yeah, Brew.
Who's our guest on the Energy Nerd Show today?
Today we have Sam Steyer from Halcyon. Good morning, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on, you guys.
Thanks for being here.
Welcome to the show. What do you want to talk about today?
It's all right. I'd like to talk about Halcyon, the company where I'm the head of product. We are organizing energy regulatory data and other important energy filings, and then using large language models to give tools to researchers to explore them, more quickly and at greater scale.
That's great. We sure need that. How long have you guys been around doing what you're doing?
We have been around just over 3 years. There are 4 co-founders, but the CEO, Bruce, came from Twitter and Google, and the chief strategy officer, Nat Bullard, was a longtime researcher at Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And so I think our DNA is sort of half tech, half energy nerddom, for lack of a better description.
And what have you learned so far, and how's it going?
It's going great. It has been incredibly fun. I think one of the things that I feel privileged to have in this job is a window into how I think AI and sort of domain experts are going to interact. And one way to capture that is there are some folks at Synapse who use Halcyon, and I had a chance to chat with them before coming on the podcast. And overwhelmingly, what they said is, we are still in the driver's seat. Like, we want to read the primary sources, inform the arguments, and that is still something that I think will remain something that a human with judgment and experience should do. And we like Halcyon because if we're looking for as much precedent as possible for some specific kind of thing, for example, times when a utility was sent back on a proposal because they didn't do a cost-benefit impact study before asking for hundreds of millions of dollars, it used to be very laborious to find the specific documents to read, to find the precedents to look at. Whereas with Halcyon and with AI tools, we can sort of shortcut getting to the right sources. But I think we still, and I think will remain in a world where a human expert reading those sources and thinking and synthesizing is the best. So it's actually made me very hopeful about the future of work, that there's sort of this very symbiotic relationship between AI tools and human experts.
Yeah, you're really describing the moment we're in, this connection with starting to use AI tools and really not having the trust and not knowing if the sources are real and kind of if the aggregate information we're getting is something that we can use. So can you say a little bit about how Halcyon makes it possible to return to the primary sources and kind of even not be overwhelmed with too many opportunities to even track?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of what we do, it doesn't use AI and could have been done before AI, and that is really organizing primary sources. So for each source that we cover, and we cover all 50 state PUCs as well as Washington, D.C., we cover the ISOs and RTOs and FERC. And we also get documents from the SEC for energy companies. So it's a big, diverse group of sources. We have a document ingestion pipeline that runs every day on, public documents that they intend to be in the public domain, but that downloads the new documents, compares against what we already have to make sure there aren't duplicates, pulls all the metadata that the publisher provides about the documents, who filed this, what is the title, in which docket, and then adds more metadata. For example, we have a process of tagging what topics does this document address, how many pages is it, as silly as that sounds, it's actually pretty useful. And then puts them all into one search engine that's regularized. So, for people who've not done a lot of PUC research, you may not know that one of the challenges is going across 50 different state PUC websites and learning a different search scheme for each of them and dealing with some of them being down. So we're basically ingesting those documents into one search engine, making it as fast and intuitive as we can to search for things that sort of you would ask for if you were tasking an intern to help you. Like for example, you could very quickly say, show me all the documents filed this month that contain the phrase Synapse Energy Economics, that are testimony or something like that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Can we look?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen. Can you guys see the Halcyon homepage?
Yes.
So glossing over alerts for a second, a big part of our engineering effort is to search, where we're we have about 7.3 billion documents in it now. Every single day, it's getting updated with more documents. You can see we cover all these different commissions. So today I'm going to leave it open. But because it's one search engine, I can just type Synapse Energy Economics and pull up over 10,000 documents where your company's name appears. And then we might say, let's just look at this month. So documents published after June 1st, 2026. I realize this podcast may come out in July, but we're in June right now. And there's 45 documents where you're referenced. And so before we use any LLMs, we just have this more organized, faster search that can get you to the primary sources. So that's half of sort of, I think, the way that we're trying to be very accurate and very grounded in the sources. The other half is that when we do use LLMs.
Wait, before you get to LLMs, I just want to say that as someone who's been doing this work for a very long time, even pre-internet and then early internet, it's super helpful to have all this stuff collected. And honestly, some of the commission websites suck. And so just as a service, kind of collecting the documents and putting them in a user-friendly, actually searchable, system is itself incredibly helpful.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. There definitely are one or two PUC websites that give our engineering staff sort of a shudder down their spine when because they're so hard to understand and ingest documents from.
One of our, I was going to say favorites. What is it, like least favorite? The Iowa website is pretty terrible. We should compare notes sometimes. We shudder when we have to find documents there.
Yeah. So you guys know the problem very well. You've been dealing with it for decades. Basically, just getting the documents in one place, tagging them with more metadata so you can search in more fine-grained ways. That's like a big part of what we do. And then the main sort of AI layer of what we do is taking some subset of the documents. So I'm looking right now at 45 documents from this month that have the phrase Synapse Energy Economics in them. And I can run a query against those documents where where Halcyon's going to look for the answer in those documents. So I can say something like, what are some of the major arguments Synapse has argued in favor of in these documents, or something like that.
A bunch of them, I think, were non-disclosure agreements.
Yes. Hopefully, we'll see how well it does. This is a live demo. I haven't run this query before at parsing out proper arguments, but basically what Halcyon's doing is taking the bucket of documents that I gave it, trying to parse out the most relevant paragraphs of text and primary sources, and then writing a little report based on those sources. And for anything specific, it's giving a citation back so you can read the underlying paragraph that it got the information from. So for example, here it's saying that Synapse provided detailed modeling for avoided costs, including projections for 15-year levelized values and 27-year initial periods in a Colorado PUC docket. And if I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting, what exactly did they do? I can click the citation and Halcyon will fly me to the page of the document where that information came from. And so the reason that's important is we have sort of two types of users. There's what I would describe as sort of higher level users and experts. And the experts almost always want to read the primary sources. And so really, even though it's a AI answer, I find that our users are often using the AI answer as sort of a navigational search tool to get into interesting documents and read them directly.
Yeah, I think especially when your use as an expert is for testimony, you appear and you're sworn in under oath, and the first question you answer, typically, maybe after your name and affiliation, is, was this testimony prepared under your supervision and control? And if you just say, oh, a robot prepared my testimony or an LLM wrote it, that's not a good answer.
Totally. And I mean, I think I see even the micro version of this where like I am a big fan of using Claude from Anthropic for work. But if one of my colleagues sent me, a product, like a PRD, a sort of product requirements document, product strategy document, and said, hey, I haven't actually read this, but I had Claude generated. I don't like that. I want ideas that a human being has read and thought hard about and is going to stand behind and is sort of widowed down. So there's not a million different things, but there's just the essential things. So, I think that's pattern is true for energy researchers and is going to be generally true for people who are deep experts in their field.
But then, Sam, if you don't like that, what's the etiquette for responding? Would you have your Claude reply to their Claude?
The beauty of working at an in-office startup is I work very closely with a sort of product-y data scientist on a lot of the stuff. And if he's very considerate. He wouldn't do that. But if he did that, I think I'd just pop my head over my monitor to his monitor and say, hey, dude.
Knock it off.
But yeah, so and then I think the other interesting thing I found is that's one type of, we're basically two archetypes of user. And one is what you were just describing. The Synapse team is very much this, where it's people who want to be 100% right, have a lot of contextual knowledge already, and use Halcyon to sort of get to primary sources faster. The other is there are times where you want to be sort of in aggregate right and pull data from a lot of places. And that is, the other type of user we have, which is more like go-to-market, market strategy developers, where they might be asking a question like, what is a better state to invest resources in developing battery project sites in Georgia or Texas or something like that? And that's different, right? It's like you need to calculate an expected value, right? But you are not, going to be an adversarial legal POC docket where you sort of need to be in every detail. And so that's been super interesting as well. And I think the power in that case it's also basically about primary sources, but it's that the LLM can compress a primary source to data. So if you could say, in that example, I want to get energy storage agreements, basically like generator interconnection agreements for batteries in Texas. I want to get them in Georgia, and I want to compare on average the percentage that were built into projects, or on average the time between getting in the queue and getting interconnection, or something like that. And in that case, people don't want to sort of go check every underlying document. They want to, us to pull that kind of summary data out and build a curve or a single number for them, and sort of us to ratify correctness. And so I think that's going to happen. Sorry, maybe a bit of a tangent, but I think that's going to happen a lot, where in every field, there will continue to be experts who sort of like the AI is like their intern, helping them find the right thing to read and analyze. And then people who are an expert at something else, but aren't, reg filing experts, may use AI to get a sort of fast 80-20 or 90-10 sense to sort of direct them. And then they'll focus on the thing they are experts at, in the case of sort of, say, a battery storage developer, project management and negotiation and that kind of stuff.
Or like if you're Jeannie, the CEO of a professional services organization like Synapse, you might be more in that second category, asking questions like, well, we're in 30 states doing this issue, but what's going on in those other 20 states, and where is our why, what are the opportunities there for selling professional services? in
Totally.
issues.
Exactly. And so what we do to try to accommodate that use case, because you could imagine, for every state, I'm going to go in and look at the filings and ask a question, but that's not really what you want for that sort of market analysis use case. So what we do is we use our own search and query and APIs and tools to sort of pre-compute big data sets like that. So I think for the example that you just gave, maybe the most germane is we have a tracker of all the investor-owned utility rate cases since 2020, and it's taking a second for the summary metrics to load, but basically I'll download it and then I'm going to stop sharing so I can share the data. But you can go in and see, in this state in general, how amenable has the PUC been to renegotiating the return on equity for the utility versus in this state in general, how much have they been waving them through or something? I don't know your go-to-market nearly as well as you do, obviously, but that it's sort of taking thousands of queries. In the data subscriptions case, we actually have Halcyon sort of checking the responses and guaranteeing the quality, and then getting those being able to draw those higher level conclusions that are sort of built from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what we do is we look for things on return on equity and rate case. We look for things like constructive regulatory environment. Sort of as a code for regulatory capture, and regulators who are overly generous to the utilities and their investors, for example.
And which is for your, I should take the opportunity to say I really admire Synapse a lot as the person fighting for the ratepayer and the environment and sort of the public interest that isn't always in the room. When you're thinking about going into a 31st state, do you want to go into a state that has the most sort of high integrity, arm's length relationship with utilities, or do you want to go into a state that has the most regulatory capture? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that we can have an impact in various sorts of states. So often it takes a while too. Like if you're first in a state, for your first appearance or your client's first appearance, they might not make much progress. So then it takes some time. There's some, getting people getting comfortable that you're honest and offering useful suggestions, and so some states are tougher than others, and it depends on the issues. Environmental issues are easier some places than others. Ratepayer issues are easier some places than others, and so it really depends. And the commissions are complicated, and I wouldn't say always changing. No, they're not always changing, but they do change over time. And you often have 3 or 5 commissioners, and so they have they're human beings with their own ideas and complex views of the world, and so opportunities. It's actually complicated, but I think just in terms of what dockets are happening that we don't know about, or learning about things quickly, that's helpful.
Yeah, and it kind of leads me to a question. So I think some of the most tempting market is where we can have the biggest impact. So clearly the ones that are further behind and maybe more difficult, better regulatory environment for the utilities.
Low hanging fruit.
Yeah. And finding the advocates in those places that want us involved is another key to this. And I wonder for you, do you envision your product being used by in the state of Louisiana, they have more progressive commissioners now, Georgia as well. Like, are there ways that advocates in those states that are kind of may see new opportunity with somewhat more open regulators, are they are you expecting those advocates to be subscribing to Halcyon and kind of investigating the details in their state or comparing to other states?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think we want in general transparency and accuracy of information, but it makes me particularly happy when advocates in the public interest are using Halcyon. We generally don't sort of publish our client list, but I will say we have PUC staff on Halcyon. We have a number of research groups. I think they wouldn't mind it. We have Power Lines, who you recently had on the show, using Halcyon to research. Their work, which I think is very much in the sort of public interest and in favor of affordability. In general, we do intend that, and we already do have folks using Halcyon for that use case.
That's so great.
Where's the name come from?
I should let Bruce tell the story. I believe that so Halcyon has two meanings. It means a past idyllic era, the sense of like the Halcyon days of yore. And I believe it is also a bird in South Africa, where our CEO Bruce is from. And an early logo idea that we didn't end up going with was a kingfisher, with a long beacon. I think the idea was diving into murky waters and being able to pull out the kernel of important information.
Oh, I love that. So you started talking about it a little bit, but can you go back to when you first started with Halcyon and you were kind of dreaming of what you care most about that you could accomplish in this? What were you thinking then, and where are you? And then the next question.
Yeah, so I should say I'm not the founder. I joined about 6 months into the company's life, and it would be awesome to get Nat and Bruce and Alex, our four founders, on. I can speak to my journey, I guess. So my whole career has been basically 3 energy software startups, and the second of the 3 was a company I was CEO of that was trying to build a blue collar labor marketplace for energy. So think of like a sort of new heat pump or a home battery, trying to find local electricians to be able to install it when they got a customer through direct marketing. And I have a background in applied math, and I did undergrad and master's in applied math. And as I was running this very sort of like in-person company, cold calling electricians, going by sites to see why things were not happening, I was watching OpenAI come out with just like the most amazing applied math research I've ever seen. ChatGPT, and before that, the GPT-3 API, and just seemed like a bunch of stuff that people had been working on for decades in machine learning was starting to work. And so as sort of I was running this company, Greenwork, it wasn't working out. I was like, I really care about climate and energy, but I have to somehow, use these tools and be part of this, because it just seemed really interesting and transformative. And I think a lot of people at Halcyon are like this, sort of philosophically want AI to work for people. So I think if there's some task that is hard, boring, slog, drudgery, I would like AI to do it for people. Whereas if there's, I'm not that excited about AI applications like, doing art, for example, or something where it's like something people love to do and want to spend their time doing. And I think that's, I think people should keep doing those things. And so I was like, sorry, very long-winded answer, but we were doing a CEO transition and ultimately shutting down Greenwork. And I had worked for 10 years in energy, and I know how much sort of hardcore contract reading and data crunching and sort of stuff that is sort of a grind and drag people are doing. And I was like, I've got to do some company that's like LLMs for energy. And my best friend is a climate-oriented venture capitalist in San Francisco, and he got pitched for the Halcyon seed round by Bruce, our CEO. And he called me afterwards and was like, I think I've found like the company you've been describing. And he introduced me to Bruce, and I joined.
That's great. Can you go back and tell me what was the lesson from? We've had such trouble, even in Cambridge, Massachusetts, trying to find electricians who are good and available and competent for installing things like heat pumps, and that's been a real frustrating journey. We have other Nerd Show episodes about electrifying your house and so on, and just like having qualified, enthusiastic
contractors, whether HVAC or electrician or anything.
Yeah.
I lived this problem for 4 years. So I thought I took one energy lesson and one entrepreneurship lesson from it. I think the energy lesson was there is a third stakeholder in any sort of behind the meter energy product, which is the contractor. And like, how can we, if you think about the contractor's interest, it's like make more money, install more easily and more quickly, avoid problems after the install, keep their crews happy. And like, a lot of the products that we supported and worked with were like super well designed for like make the homeowner happy and super well designed for the planet, and like not sort of like designed for that third stakeholder. But oftentimes like that's actually the essential stakeholder, because either you make the sale directly to the homeowner and then you can't find someone to install because they're not getting it's not good for their business, or more often what our partners would tell us was they'd say, hey, like we're expanding into Minnesota. We're going to acquire some customers in Minnesota, but to like really make this work, we need the contractors themselves who have a lot of local relationships with homeowners to start selling our thing. And that was very hard. Like it just wasn't sort of like, it wasn't designed for their interest. And in the few cases where we did sort of meet a contractor who had made their own business work better doing super high efficiency heat pumps or something, that was like just electric for the product company. Because then it's like your CAC has suddenly gone to zero because someone else is aggressively, selling your product in a local market. And also it's super local because like there's thousands of AHJs, basically like permitting bodies, there's trust. A lot of people get their contractor by asking their friend, like, hey, have you done a project on your house? So it's super local. So basically designed for the contractor, I think was the lesson I took energy-wise.
We had Saul Griffith on the show. Saul Griffith, and he said, he pointed out a program of giving heat pumps to contractors for their own homes. And
I love that. I thought that was so smart. Because it's like, that's actually the expert, it's sort of like you go to the doctor and I'm like, I trust the doctor, the contractor's like that for your house. Like they are the trusted authority in the room. And like, so appealing to them is so important. I actually listened, I'm a huge Saul Griffith fan. I thought your episode was great. And I thought that idea in particular, which I'd never heard before, was really smart.
Yeah.
So you had an entrepreneurship lesson too, or was that?
Yes. Founder market fit. I have spent my whole life loving applied math, doing, when I was a kid, I liked sports, but I also was a mathlete. Went to grad school was heaven for me. And the first company, Station A, that I was co-founder of, was a very sort of like mathy company selling into analytics and technical teams. And it was sort of like everything was natural. And then I have a deep respect for construction, but I have no experience. I've never worked a day of construction in my life. It wasn't like my parents ran a contracting, like I think the Service Titan founders, their dad had like a home services business, sort of like they grew up around it. And so I found the whole time, so I didn't have any construction background. And then also, if you look at the great marketplace founders, they're usually like super hardcore extrovert, go to the bus stop and sign up 5 Uber drivers. And that's not my person. I'm sort of I think I'm hardworking, but I'm not like hyper aggressive jet fuel person. And so this was a marketplace in construction. And I think that it was like, it was like someone actually does need to build this business, but I don't think I was the right person. I left with more humility for like right founder for right business.
Interesting.
Cool.
Good lessons. So I feel like we should get back to AI and the AI part of the LLM part of your tool, and kind of what are other use cases? What are other people using it for?
Yeah.
And
another thing that a lot of our users do is set up alerts, and the alerts are similar to the query that I showed you, where it's basically take a stream of documents and have an LLM answer a question about them, but it's proactive. It's you getting a weekly email or notification in the app, whatever you want. And I think that use case is super cool because there are many people in energy, either advocates or salespeople, or who are basically waiting for some specific instance of something to happen. So to give a business example, if you sell smart metering infrastructure, the first time that a utility establishes a working group on AMI 2.0, Advanced Metering Infrastructure 2.0, that's like, we got to, it's go time, red alert. We've got to be part of that process because that's, how our business works. But every day going and looking at 50 PUC websites and seeing, has anybody said favorable things about smart metering or set up a smart metering working group is totally prohibitively time consuming. And then I think the advocacy version would be like, has someone started a docket where they're going to do something that's really important for us to shape? And so we have thousands of Halcyon alerts going out every day where people are getting an email from Halcyon that says, there were 151 filings filed today that have the word advanced metering infrastructure in them. And the one that's really relevant for you is in Colorado. It's this Excel energy docket or something. And I think in general, AI is becoming more proactive, like understand what you need and try to help you without you having to do any work. And alerts is sort of our effort to do that for people.
And agentic. So if you feed those alerts into your agent that then does the next 4 things, then you can go to the beach.
Yes, we have multiple users doing that. We need to make it easier for them, I will say, as head of product, but we've had a bunch of meetings where we are talking to a customer or a user and they'll show us like, hey, we have this process where your alerts go to a Google inbox that we set up, and then we use another product to pipe them into Claude or to put them in a channel in our Slack or to set up some other Rube Goldberg process that we do.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my last question, because we've been on for a little while, but as head of product, I mean, you probably have your hands full with what you've got right now, but can you tell us a little bit about what's on the horizon? Because every time you said there's this, data from AGI, or AMI, and there's, different things in the industry that probably are tangent to what you're already doing. Are there any
what's next for you?
Future plans you can share?
Yeah, totally. There are 3 big product pushes for roughly this year. One is basically enable users to define and update your own data sets. So I showed you we're maintaining a rate case tracker, we're maintaining a battery projects tracker. But one of the things we've learned from doing that is there are many and varied organizations in the energy space, and they want different data. So imagine, you can define a data set that you care about, and our model is keeping it up to date as new information comes in. So that's 1. 2, some form of programmatic access. The people are using Cloud Cowork and Codex all day at work. Not everyone, but some people are. And for them, being able to have, install an MCP server or API where they can be working in a different paradigm, but pull in information and insights from Halcyon. That's 2. And then 3rd is continuing to expand the data sources that we cover. I think I can't be quite as specific there, but basically, we cover a lot of data sources today, but there are also some glaring ones that our users asked for that we don't cover that we should do the engineering work to build ingestion for.
Cool.
Well, thanks, Sam, for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.